You're listening to Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps aspiring professionals in film get where they're going faster by dissecting the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives in the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley, and with me today is my good friend and Make It podcast co-host, Nicholas Buggs. Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast. And this is an Indie Talk week, and that means I have my good friend and co-founder of Bonsai Creative with me, Nicholas Buggs. Nick, say hello.
Hello. It's good to be back, man. It's been a while.
It is good to be back, and it's that time of the year again, or is it? Normally we are doing the award season, Oscar season much sooner, much earlier, but this is like the COVID recovery year. And so we're doing it April 25th this year. We're talking about the Academy Awards. We're talking about Oscars. And the reason it's on my mind outside of the time, Nick, is that it goes back to some day one stuff for us, where we went around and we asked people, with just a little tape recorder in our hand, we walked around and we said, what does it mean to you to make it? And most people, we'd say 80% of people said, just paying my bills, doing what I love. Yep. And we took it on face value, but we have our cynicism. We're optimistic people, Nick. But we had our cynicism about the answer because, for example, I would say every person that we talked to wanted to what? Win an Oscar. Win an Oscar.
Win, period.
Right. So if you win an Academy Award, you win an Oscar, you certainly have a degree of notoriety. You're doing a little bit more than just paying your rent or on your apartment. You're doing some bigger things. And so I think there's just a part of it, Nick, that we can all resonate with. Like, yes, I guess at minimum, I think the real answer is you add a qualifier. At minimum, I want to pay my bills doing what I love.
You could, yeah.
But there's no ceiling to
right.
To
I'm just gonna put the floor.
Yeah. Here's the floor. The ceiling is I'd love to be a multi-Oscar winner, and that kind of sits right with about everybody we've talked to, especially when we've worked with you deeply and been executive producing or advisory producing on a particular film or consulting on a screenplay or whatever it might be, and they want to win. And so here we are at Oscar season, and here are our nominees for Movie of the Year. Now we're going to play a little game, Nick. A little game. You're a man of games. So here we go. The nominees are The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. Nick, how many of those have you seen?
Doom. No, I could stop now. I haven't seen any of them, bro.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here we are. We have an independent film podcast, and we're in this world. These are the best movies that the movie industry produced this year by consensus. And here we are having to play catch up. And it's like this every single year. I have seen one of these films. I have seen Judas and the Black Messiah. I texted the friend group, the bestie group, right away as soon as I watched it. Right. I thought it was incredible. I think Lakeith Stanfield should win an award. He was unfreaking believable in that. But all the rest of them, I almost watched Promising Young Woman. Almost. That almost happened.
How'd you get around watching Nomadland? Because that's like winning everything. Every time I open up something, it's like it's won something else.
It's Mank or Nomadland. And what happens is it's a movie that I'm probably going to have to watch alone. It's not like you bring the family in and they're like, you watch that trailer and you say, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, exactly. It's not.
So the reality is that I think every single year we all just sort of nod, just like you said, We just sort of nod and agree.
Yep.
These are the good movies. And then we talk about it like we know.
Or we nod.
Have you seen Nomadland?
Right.
It's gonna win everything.
Right. Oh yeah. That's right.
It's gonna win everything, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't know.
And we don't know.
We're not watching the shit. So every year I'm scrambling to catch up and watch all the movies so I actually have a basis by which to speak about this stuff. But so far for me, it's just been Judas and the Black Messiah. And I don't know, maybe there's another movie out there that deserves to be in this group, Nick. I mean, is there a movie that stands out to you as one that you love this year?
Yeah, I guess it depends, right? So you talking about one of the Gatekeeper movies? Right? Are you talking about a movie that I've seen, like what is it? Concerto is a Conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a short film though.
It is.
Yeah. But it's great.
But was it nominated for an Oscar? I don't believe so. I don't think it was up there, but man, that movie got me, right? And it's, you could say it's independent. I think it was, it's not a studio film, but it's got some, some folks who vouched, for it. It actually was executive produced by Ava DuVernay. So it's got some names behind it, but, a simple short film that likely moved me more than, again, I haven't seen Nomadland yet. It'll be a while, but I doubt that Nomadland will move me the way that short film moved me. So
I'm sure Nomadland is unbelievable.
I guarantee it.
I'm sure it is.
I guarantee.
Do you want to? I don't know if there's. Well, I don't know how much background we want to give to the short film Concerto, but the thing that got me about it is it. There's a story the grandfather tells in it that doesn't feel like it could happen anymore. And because of that, it feels timeless. It feels priceless. It feels precious. It feels like there's a, I said timeless, but I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah,
it means, I meant the opposite actually. Yeah. It feels like there's a fuse on our ability to tell stories or have that story exist in culture anymore, in that way, but maybe for the better, right? He had to do it because of the Jim Crow South and the way things were in America then. But as that goes away, that story is no longer necessary. But yet it's so good. So I don't want to give anything away. But
again, your core, when I watch it, just gets me down to my core. So it was. But that's the type of thing. Like for me, I'm all in on the indies, right? Yeah, especially the shorts. I feel like, when independent filmmakers are going all in on shorts, man, they're like putting everything in and having to be super creative with limited resources to make something that's really impactful, maybe to get seen or maybe to do the next thing. So like those shorts, man, I'm all in. So it's like when people are asking about the Oscars, have you seen this? Have you seen that? I'm like, wait. Have you seen this film and this film? Like, you need to go see these. And what I love about those as well is it's so much easier to share those with people. Like, can you imagine? You're like, yo, Nick, you got to watch Nomadland. I'm like, how long is that movie, man?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If I tell you about a Concerto as a Conversation and that movie is like 8 minutes long, and I tell you that it like almost brought a tear to my eye, you're going to watch that 8 minutes, and you're going to get moved by it, and you're going to pass it on to the next person. So
anyway, I think it's 13 minutes, but it's great. And we can't talk about time of movie anymore because after Zack Snyder's Justice League, after I burned 4 hours with that, and I mean that in the best way, I liked it a lot. 4 hours, Nick. And so you can watch anything now. Nothing. The time isn't the issue. It's can you keep me there for 4 hours? Yeah,
but it's also I can share it with you. Like that's the other thing is that again, 13 minutes, right? It's so much easier to share. Right. That's what I love about it. Like you can watch it. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? Like you could be in the middle of doing something, work, cooking, who knows? You could stop for 13 minutes, right? And knock it out and have this, feeling that just goes through your entire body, and then something you want to share with other people in 13 minutes, right? You didn't need 4 hours. You didn't need 2 hours. it got done in 13 minutes.
It's a good point, because this could be sacrilege, and I hope no one judges me for this, but I did have to watch Justice League in 3 settings. I think, like, I didn't watch it 4 hours all the way through.
No, that's because you didn't pee first. I mean, you got to pee first, man.
You gotta
come on,
break
now.
it up. Actually, I didn't start it soon enough each day and on the right day.
Right.
If you started at 10 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, you know, are you really gonna finish it? But I've always said that it's not a matter of length. It's a matter of, do you have the content to sort of, I almost walked backwards into a bad joke there, but it's also a matter of, like, what is the content of it?
Right.
It's still, the joke is still there.
Yeah, it's still there.
Like, how many times, and my example is, how many times have I watched Interstellar? I've given 3 hours, like 7 or 8 times at this point, to that movie, because it's just so boom. It's just so good. It punches you. But this Oscar talk also leads us into our main topic for the day, because we know that there are Oscar qualifying festivals, and that if you're an independent filmmaker, even though, like we said, the floor is that you want to make what you're making and pay your rent, pay your bills doing it, the ceiling, there is no ceiling that you want to cap. You never want to cap your talent, cap your success, cap your ability. And so you want to take your movie, you want to have a plan, you want to take your short, take your feature, whatever it is, and apply to these Oscar qualifying festivals, Nick. And so we thought we would expound upon our film investment series episode, our edition that launched just a few days ago, called Execute a Plan, and just expound upon that concept and why, for example, you would want the specificity of, I'm not just going to enter a festival, I'm going to enter an Oscar qualifying festival.
That's right.
And so I want you to remember that part, Nick, but before we get into that, let's break down to the audience that may not have heard the film investment series episode from Sunday or a few days ago, depending on when you heard it. Let's break down the concept for everyone. So the idea is to not execute the plan, but execute a plan. And the reason we make a distinction there as a key principle around investing, for example, is, and this is sort of a rubric we use internally to invest in films, is because a plan emphasizes and sort of implies that the plan could and should change. And so let's define and get into it a little bit. What is a plan? So to us, the way we look at it, a plan is just an explanation that's highly specific. It's a high quality, great explanation that's highly specific. And so what you don't want, and what Nick and I have received over the years, is a series, dozens and dozens of prospectus that outline a very non-specific plan. And you've heard us talk about, if you've been a fan of this show and part of this audience for a while, you've heard us talk about, where is the branding and marketing spend in your budget, for example. But going even beyond that, where is the specificity in your plan? If your plan is to shoot this scene, well, how are you going to shoot it? So we know that directors like to map this out with their cinematographer, their DP, their assistant camera, first camera. But even then, I've been on set where, that was the plan, but was it specific enough to get the shot the right way, right? So let's say you're going to shoot a scene on a football field. Mm-hmm. Do you know what you're going to do, and how specific is it? So a lot of times that is very specific because you have to get the shot, but the overall plan, the business plan, so to speak, for how to exploit the film and be successful, it's just general. Like, we're going to go to a festival, it's going to garner interest, and then someone's going to buy it, give us the money, and then we're going to pay everybody back. And literally these prospectus and deal sheets, Nick, look and sound just like that. Here's our comp. Here are our 3 comps. Here's what they made. So therefore, we're going to make that.
Yep.
And here's how you're going to get paid back. And it's going to work just like that. And Nick, that's not specific enough, is it?
No, it's interesting because I think you give them, a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt, when it comes to the plan, right? Because if you and I have received 1,000 prospectus and pitch decks, right, over the past couple of years, we might have seen 2 with a plan, right? All of the other ones have a vision, right? I think that's it. It's a vision, right? And that's where the comparables come in.
Yeah.
Right. This is a vision of who we aspire to be, right? Even the investor, return, it's a vision of, in the best case scenario, what would it look like? Right? There's no plan. It doesn't say how you're going to get there. Even with the festivals, like you mentioned, I think there's an intent to go to festivals. I think everyone expects that, right?
Yeah.
But never in the pitch deck or the prospectus anywhere does it say which festivals they plan to go to and why. Right? Why those festivals? Are they Oscar qualifying? Is there something specific about your film that really hits the audience of that festival? Is it a location thing? Is it a culture thing?
Do we have context there?
Exactly. What's the plan? But there's normally not a plan. And I guess it's a tough one to kind of push back on, depending on how you define success, right? Because we've seen a lot of independent films get made, right? And they'll get distributed through a variety of different distributors. So they'll make it somewhere, right? Amazon, you can make it to iTunes, YouTube Movies, all these different places. So if that's the mark of success, is just getting the money, then I guess whatever they're doing works.
Right.
Right. It's not like we have a shortage of independent films getting funded. Right. It's really the shortage is the independent films returning a profit. Right. Getting that ROI that the investors are, I don't even know if they're expecting it, but that they're saying that they're going to get to the investor. That's where the plan comes in.
And let me jump in right there, because that is one of our primary concerns. Like, I think our big goal is to disrupt the way independent films get financed forever. It's one of our big goals. And one of the problems is you have a lot of one-time film investors, because they go in, they invest in movies, they get sold sort of a bill of goods, either intentionally or unintentionally, and they never come back. Because it's just an absolute, it's like a 99-to-1 risk to reward ratio, and it's not worth it, right? There are just better places to diversify your cash, and quite frankly, you could put it in more capable hands. And so what will end up happening is that you lose all these people. You basically keep losing reliable people who love art, people who operate and give money to filmmakers in good faith, simply because your plan isn't, your explanation of something isn't highly specific.
Yeah. But again, I think that's on the success side of it, right? Like you said, like that's the investment, because absent the plan, then to me, it's not really an investment, right? It ends up being a donation, that's basically what it is. Cause it's just,
I used to do that with friends.
Yeah, there you go. Like the investor basically
Chris, can I borrow $100? How about I give you $100?
Give it to you. Yeah.
If you borrow $100, we're not going to be friends, because you never pay me back.
Right.
I will give you $100.
Yep, and easy. And I think that's what it turns into. But like you said, after a while, those investors who could be second time and third time and fourth time investors, they're not coming back, right? Because that plan isn't there. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Right. And you have to be sort of 2 feet in a unique way to keep, to stay in it, to come back and understand what you're looking for the next time. And that is the mission we're sort of taking on in a lot of ways for other investors and would-be investors, and for filmmakers and producers that want to find new high net worth individuals that can invest, or new places and unique ways to invest. The advice Jenica Schwartzman gave about how to use your community instead as a Kickstarter. So instead of, you can use Kickstarter, you can use Seed and Spark, you can use these services, but you can also just kickstart your community. And here's how you do it, and here's how you don't do it. I thought was super duper powerful. So I want to go into a couple of topics that kind of live inside of the larger topic of the specificity and explanation of a highly specific thing that lacks variability. That is a great plan. That's a plan to execute. And so let's talk about what we mean by that variability, and then go into some interesting places where that exists. So, for example, we've seen a film be compared to a film that had twice the budget, had award-winning stars in it, that had name recognition and networks to bring with them and influence to bring with them, and then had behind the curtain packaged power in the executive producing team and the producing team and maybe even the director be compared to your film. And that's a way that your explanation has too much variability in it. It's like, whoa, that's not a good comp. It could be a decent story comp. Maybe I could see it like, oh, that's close. I can see where you're coming from, to be fair to you, but there's so much variability in that. How do we invest in that? Or how do we, let's say we're not on the investment side, let's say we're in the filmmaking side. How do we actually execute upon this plan in a way that's beneficial to everybody when there's that much variability? Because what will happen, Nick, is you'll go to a festival and let's say you win something there, but no one is interested in buying your film. So we talked about this last year. This is a thing that's happening in the UK a lot with BBC Film, where you spend $1 million to $6 million on your independent film and there's no buyers waiting for you, even though you do good in the festival. Well, there's so much variability in that now you can say to yourself, well, we just entered the wrong festival at the wrong time. So now you said this was the right dose of medicine to take to cure me, and now you're going to change the dose on me because it didn't work out because I'm still sick. And that's what you have to try to avoid in your planning. Or let's say, Nick, it happens the way you said it. Hey, my film's on Amazon and we won. Did you?
Right.
Amazon pays 6 cents per every 90 minutes average. Watched.
Yeah.
And if your plan was just to go to indie film rights or put it on Amazon or whatever, that's not really, there's a lot of variability in that, because Amazon could have been any place or any platform that will take your movie. And it really doesn't help everyone out. So when your investors come back and say, well, where's all the money from this? You can say, well, we just went with the wrong distributor. So again, you're changing the dose on me. You told me this was the dose that was going to get me my money back if I'm an investor. And you told your filmmaker, if you're a producer, this was the dose that was going to make you a notable director. And you told your actors, this is the dose that's going to get you notoriety and get you that next gig and get you a career bump. And yet you've now changed the dose to say, well, we just needed to do this and we just need to do that. And we'll do that when the distributor's licensing rights let up in 10 to 15 years or 20 years. Right. So it's these are big mistakes that have like costly and big sort of lack of decision and have a costly output in it.
Yeah. Again, I look at that plan and, we talk about the comps, and I just don't know how the current model that we're seeing, like, how does it work? If you're comparing your film, right? Like if you're comparing your film to what you mentioned, which is, again, you're an indie, right? Your cast is your friends, right? So they're no one, notable, but you're comparing your project to these films that have notable people in them, right? And have larger budgets and all this. Like, how does that work? Like, how is that a plan? How is that the right thing to do for independent filmmakers? Right. And again, it's like they're getting money using this method, right? So it's kind of working to a degree. And I guess some folks are kind of tricked a little bit into it. I don't want to say that it's not being tricked, but
it goes to this whole thing. Like the worst thing that can happen is being successful for doing the wrong thing, because then that gets repeated over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I guess that's what it is. It's just someone did it, but like, how long ago was that? So it's like, so there's the comp thing.
But it's the cat chasing its tail is what I'm saying. It's like it worked on this investor, so the filmmaker does it again, and because that investor is friends with the new investor, then the next investor invests again. So it actually works on both sides.
You're right, but
it works on the investor and on the filmmaker over and over and over again.
But it's a winning combination if you just want to get it funded, right?
Yeah,
I think that's it. Like it's, because we can't knock it because it happens every day, right? If you can use that model of a comp from 32 years ago and an investor is going to give you $100,000, do it. Might as well. But if you're trying to win, right? If you want to, to get to that next level, then it doesn't stop at just wooing the investor, right? You got to actually have a plan to make that money back, to do the next thing, like to get it to the next level. And, I kind of wonder sometimes, are independent filmmakers, like what's the benchmark that independent filmmakers are using to get to that next level? Right? Yeah. Are they literally looking at, the 3 horror films that were, crazy unicorn successful that just don't make sense? Is that the rubric for independent film? Like, what is the model? Because, we're seeing it in the fact that there's no plan. Like, you're asking for money from an investor. Normally you would do that and you'd have a business plan, right? But there's no business plan. There's a film vision. Right. So it's like, is that the rubric? Is that the model? And when's the last time as an independent filmmaker you saw that model work? Right. We see business plans work all the time, right? There's examples of that.
And they fail all the time too, but
right. But there's examples of that, right? Of, actual business plans getting funded and working. But I just don't see the opposite, right? Where it's just like, I have no plan, and wow, look how much success I have, right? Like, look at this, I won this and won that. And, when's the last time you saw an independent film, outside of a short, win an Oscar or win one of these things? So I'm just kind of like, I'm in that place where I'm really thinking about, especially as we're talking to independent filmmakers.
A true indie, not the pseudo indies.
Exactly. And we're having these consults. It's like, you really have to think differently, right? It doesn't work by just, basically creating a vision board, right? Yeah. That's not enough. You really have to create a plan. That's like for us, like we're not putting money into something that is a vision board. That's not something that we do. And I think that, any investor would likely be remiss to do that. Right. And again, it's not, we've talked about this before about the return on investment. Sometimes it's not financial. We get that. Right. I mean, if you're going to if you actually get into the right festivals, sometimes it's just being associated with a film that's in a specific festival. Like that's enough for an investor. Right.
It's a leveling up.
Exactly. And that's fine. If these are the things and you're hitting the mark, but there's a plan to that too, right? Because you got that investor because you're going to go to this festival. So you better get into that festival.
Well, the interesting thing there is that you can say that and people will be behind you, even in your own community. You could say, I don't expect this to be this is a loss leader, but here's what it's going to do. And here's why it's important. And here's what you're actually supporting.
Exactly. So that's the key. That's where I think independent film can really be successful, right? It's kind of redefining, what success means. And I think that's it. It's like, forget those comps, man, right? It's a whole other world. Like you don't operate in the world where those comps operated. You can't give that return back. But there are things that you can give back.
Oh, that's a whole nother indie talk. That's a whole nother episode about just the fact that a lot of times the comps are coming from an era that has been passed in the film industry in general.
Yeah.
Like the whole money has changed. And so that should be a red flag to anybody where they're like, that's a different world where that comp came from, even if it is a line on budget and on cast. I mean, it's just people's behaviors are different. The way they're pulling the attention is different.
5 years ago, right? I mean, when did people really start? What do you call it? Cutting the cord, right? Back in the day, right?
Probably
And back in the day,
2012, probably.
right? Back in the day could be, let's go 10 years, right? Let's go 10 years. So 10 years ago, networks, theaters, monopoly on content, right? Like, and captive audiences. Like there's only
they're all still vertically integrated, but now they.
No, I'm just saying, like I can't.
But now they
flip.
That's all they have. Yeah,
exactly. But I can flip now. Like before, it was like, oh, if you're sitting down at TV, to dinner at 8:00, there's only so many things you get to choose from at 8:00, and then that kind of started changing more and more and more. And with streaming, it's just blown up. Like cable was one thing, but
it's become like here's my vertical integration versus your vertical integration. Let's see who wins.
Right.
Like Netflix has got 35 nominations. So like, okay, I think our vertical wins. Right. And so, I mean, to your point, yes, there's more choice. There's like a lot of different places you can go, but the more valuable the vertical, the more insulated it is. So it's kind of just more of the same.
Exactly. But
like you don't get to be in that machine.
Right. But you could win before because you had control. Right. Yeah. You have to come to the theater to watch movies. Like you can't get these day and date. You can't watch this. And even the screens, right? Like it cost $1 million 10 years ago for a 50-inch screen, right? Mm-hmm. Like it was super. And then like all
now
of a sudden
TV's a commodity.
Exactly. It's like
but the reason why is because they have microphones in them.
No, there you go. And cameras, right? You are the commodity. But yeah, everything's changing. So
the TV knows what you were doing at 11:30 last night.
Right. So if you're going 5 years back, things are different now, right? There was no COVID 5 years back. Like, how does that change stuff? You go 10 years back. I mean, that is a whole other world. So again, even the comps, it's like, what value do they actually have other than a vision board, right? It's like, I think that's it. So to me, they're like Jenica was saying, to me, that's where you are. It's like the community is where it's at for independent filmmakers. And then, the next step for me is like, okay, now if you're going to make
or change the structure from the beginning and don't just roll out the film school standard. This is what I was taught about how films get made and financed, sort of triage that keeps getting repeated in changing times. Like how many times have we seen and heard where the thing you were taught, whether it be from screenwriting on down to film production, the thing you were taught in school no longer applies.
It didn't apply by the time you graduated.
Right. And that goes in all fields, by the way. Who's better prepared to run a business? The kid who starts a service business when he or she is 18 and runs it into the ground by the time they're 21, or the person that does a business management degree at a public college? To me, the kid is infinitely more prepared to run the next business and to be successful but the person in college might have a better basis for broader knowledge. But that specific skill set, the leverage, the accountability, all that stuff, the three most important things, all those three things get learned by just running that service business when you were 18. And yeah, like Jenica said, in the streets. and so that's a big part. Sorry, I jumped in on you there. What was the second half of your thought?
Oh, no. I think that it's just the idea of going to the community, is doing something different. I think it's a matter of the offering.
Yeah.
So, some people are just, you could be fans of auteur cinema. Mm-hmm. You could be fan of a specific topic, or a specific cultural or social issue, that needs a voice. People might fund that, right? It's not necessarily an investment, other than it's an investment in, them seeing their voice or someone's voice that they care about, showing up on a big screen. So I think for independent films, like I said, I just feel like there's a different definition of success, that really should come along with these pitch decks and these prospectus, and they should be trying to do something different. What that is, it runs the gamut, really.
Yeah, to me, the film wins or loses at the very beginning. What did you do in pre-pro? What was the plan in pre-pro? What is the financial structure of the deal? If your plan is to go out and get angels to fund your film, you have put an enormous amount of risk on the film's success just in that decision alone, versus the decision to try to get commitments and package your film on the front end and sell it to one of these verticals. And when we say vertically integrated, most people probably know what that means, but what we're saying is a business that owns every part of the food chain, of the supply chain. So if I'm Warner Brothers, I own HBO Max. So I'll write a check to HBO Max, and HBO Max writes a check to AT&T, who owns both of us. And so I own the whole thing. I own the marketing, I own the branding, I own the distribution, I own the production. And so it's my circus, my monkeys, so to speak. And Netflix, they own the whole kit and caboodle. Yeah. Amazon owns the whole kit and caboodle, Hulu, et cetera. And so I don't know. It's like, why not package something that's interesting to one of these verticals and then have them buy on the front end, so you're in the black before you shoot, kind of thing. And to me, if they're looking to buy because there's more need for content than ever, and there's more verticals and more streamers and more companies looking to buy than ever, and you have more choice than ever. But you have to break out of this old mold of let's get a bunch of angels to come in and investors to come in and fund this, and let's try to make their money back on the back end, when the streaming has been commoditized. The viewership is now a commodity. So it's like going for pennies on the dollar. Like it's like a guy in the middle of Central Park or Times Square with his jacket open, and there's just like watches hanging from it. Like, I got a view here. I got a view here. Right. Come over here and watch this. Or watch this. And it's like, is this a genuine view? I don't know. It's like, come watch it. So I think the lesson here is like, create that specificity around every part of the plan as much as you can, because you will be successful, and more successful the more specific your plan is for how to do anything, down to the financial structure, down to why you're going to shoot this scene that way, down to why you're, like you said earlier, Nick, why you're going to these festivals and not these over here.
Right.
Let's talk about which distributors you're going to, and why you want to go to those distributors and target them versus others. Because like you said, some of these things come off as vision boards and why? Because we're artists, we're creatives, we're idea people. These are ideas. These are great ideas. But I think if you want to live in the world of, and you ask the question, what's a realistic expectation of success for an independent filmmaker? What are the benchmarks? Well, if your benchmark is being profitable, leveling up, having a great film, all that stuff, and like if your benchmark's a little higher than what we've been talking about, then you need to be an executor. So we know you're an idea person because you're in film, right? We got that part down.
Right.
Like, okay, got it. You got a ton of ideas. I love it. Can you tell me how you're going to do that, though? That's an awesome idea. But how are you actually going to do it? Because that's the hard part, as it turns out.
Yeah, and every investor, I'd say every good investor will just say the simple thing about the ideas, right? It's the same thing for every savvy investor, is that ideas are a dime a dozen. Mm-hmm. Everyone's got them, right? Everyone's has an idea, but not many people can execute. So how can you execute? How are you going to do that? How are you going to make that thing successful by whatever measure you have measured success, right? And that's why I look at independent films. It's like, again, it's a big thing for me just to try to find that sweet spot, right? And I feel like that sweet spot, it isn't that $500,000 film that you don't have the connections, right? The network, the influence, the back door potentially that you need. Like, you don't have all the things to execute on that. So does it make sense to go that big if you don't have the pieces of the plan to execute, right? For much less than 500,000, for 5,000, 50,000 even, you could probably execute a really good plan, right? It doesn't necessarily involve making your investors back 20% and making $4 million because the comp said you'd make it. It's like, no, you could go to some really good festivals. You could get some notoriety at those festivals. You could speak on behalf of a community that has not been adequately spoken for. You can employ people from your community in the film. You could do a lot of those things for 50,000. Right? Whereas at 500,000, it just puts you into another bracket, a whole nother set of expectations, a different level of risk that may not be within your scope of execution. Like, that's the key. They're within scope of your vision, right? Your idea, but not within scope of your execution.
Yeah. There's something about that 150 to 750 range that puts you in this precarious spot in filmmaking, because filmmaking works, and we've talked about this before, I believe, it has a perplexing sort of logic to it, because the straight on logic that we get presented with all the time is, well, this movie has a low budget, so it's going to be able to make its money back quicker. No. If you're in that 100 to 750 pocket, you're actually in this place where your money's has the lowest chance of getting made back. If you're making a $25,000 film, now maybe that logic makes sense. But if you're making 100 to 750, no, you might as well go ahead and bump to 3 million to 5 million, because then at least money talks and bullshit walks. You know what I mean? Like, you can at least go get now the pressure's on. That's a big movie, bigger movie.
It is.
But now you can get a great casting director. Now you can get a top flight line producer. Now you can get all the best locations. Yeah. You can get the best VFX if you need to. You can go get Savan.
A little plug right there.
Yeah. And you can go get these folks and pay them. And then they'll be engaged and they'll do a good job, because they won't be mercenaries anymore, right?
And they'll leverage their network, which is what is required at that level of the game.
They'll get your network, and that'll help you sell. And like I said before, these are changing times. You can't lean on film school anymore to tell you how to do it. I mean, obviously take that information and leverage it where you can. But we're about to enter a whole new age. We're entering the age of smart ledgers and smart contracts. And how will that... When someone's able to actually create products that are simple, like the way that these crypto exchanges work, where at first they were super complicated and now it's like an app and anybody can use it like a regular application. Like, okay, that's solved. They're going to win. But what happens when someone creates an app that works on the chain, works in the blockchain with smart ledgers and smart contracts, where I'm, as a filmmaker, can upload my prospectus to the blockchain to a place where people can view it, almost like viewing NFT art. So a non-fungible token art, right? They can see the whole project, and Brad Pitt can go in and say, I like that story. He read the screenplay. I like that story. I will commit. He does it on a smart contract, so it's proof. Trustless proof that Brad Pitt is in. Then that next actor comes, says they're in, and you create an entire film package, and you didn't need a casting director, you didn't need an agent, you didn't need a manager, you don't need anybody, because it's actually more solid than that. Because what happens now is we sign letters of intent, and we walk those around to banks and say, hey, this is who we have in it. You want to get involved? You want to invest? Give us a loan, whatever. Do you want to bond this completely, like do a completion bond for this? Like, we run around with letters. That's going away. So again, being in front of that, that's where That's where the magic's going to happen in the indie world, because believe it or not, to me, everything is rolling back down the hill towards the independent creative, regardless of what you want to create. And I mentioned NFT because how could you not today? But that's a great example of it. The part of me thinks, and this is the cynical part of me, I promised you earlier I'm not cynical. Part of me thinks that the reason it makes news outside of the fact that it's exceptional is that there's a little bit of jealousy from the gatekeepers. Like, no, our system only works if the artists stay broke. Beeple wasn't supposed to make $69 million. That's a big problem. Right. People can feed a bunch of other artists in his network for the rest of their life now. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that's not the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to be broke. You're supposed to grovel. And that way, when I give you a fucked up contract, you have to sign it because you need me so badly. And now you don't have to grovel. It's back into your hands. You put your work up there for sale. It sells for what it sells for. And guess what? You can create something every day and put it up on a market on the blockchain. And it goes to the globe at scale forever. That's better than the internet. And that's where we're going. So I would say keep creating, make highly specific plans, just like the one I just described, by the way. And you'll win. And by the way, raise your benchmark. Don't make your benchmark, hey, I just want to make a movie and throw it on any independent distributor platform that will take my movie. Because guess what? Yeah. They'll all take it because they want to leverage your IP and this to make a big slate out of things and then use it to get their own bank loans.
Yeah. And for me, the key thing in there is that the independent filmmaker has to change. Mm-hmm. Right? This comp model, this vision board model, this no plan model, wherever that came from, it doesn't work, right? It just doesn't make sense. And it's not where we are now. It's not where we're going, right? So it's like you have to change. And maybe to your point, Chris, you mentioned earlier about what you learned in school, maybe they taught you everything that was absolutely correct. And they taught you everything that was absolutely correct at the time. But what they taught you, well, I will say this, what they didn't teach you was everything that was correct and everything that was correct at the time about independent filmmaking. They taught you how the studios do it.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. So you could do a comp sheet. Exactly. You could do a comp sheet with a vision board. Right? Because you're in the studio, like you're in the world, you have the connections, you can get the people, you can package, you are all of those things. So they were right. That's how films were made. But you're not one of them.
But I don't even agree with that because Hollywood doesn't work that way.
I'm just saying, I get
how
it.
Hollywood works is Tiffany Haddish's agent, also represents some director, and they all pitch a thing together, and then they sell it, and then they sell it to a vertical, and then the vertical makes it.
Right, exactly. So what I'm saying is that at the time, right, that they learned these things that might have been correct, but if it was correct, it wasn't correct for an indie. It was correct for the studios at the time. So the next thing they'll learn is how the studios do it, because you're not in the studio. So it's like you have to find another way, and that's another conversation, we can have as we dig into this. We work with filmmakers, but it is definitely like it's time to step up. Like you said, do you want to level up and have a plan,
highly specific plan,
a highly specific plan, level up at, what festivals and why, what you're going to do in like we talked branding and marketing. How are you going to sell this thing? To whom are you going to sell it? This is time to step up because
we're going to sell it to everybody, Nick.
Yeah, right. Right. So it's time to step up.
That's an inside joke.
Yeah. And get beyond the vision board. You got to have an executable plan. So I'm with you.
I love it. And we'll end this lovely conversation, hopefully helpful conversation for everyone out there, with a parable that I think is very apropos, which is a young girl is helping her mother make Thanksgiving dinner. And she notices that her mom cuts the bottom off of the turkey. And she says, "Mom, why do you cut the bottom off of a turkey? And the mom says, well, I don't know. Let me ask your grandmother. And she asks her mother, and the grandma says, well, I don't know. Somehow great grandma's still alive in the story, by the way. So she asks the great grandmother, and great grandma says, well, we do that because back when I was coming up, we didn't have a pan big enough to hold the turkey. Mm-hmm. And so here we are 3-4 generations down the line, we're still cutting the bottom off of a turkey, even though our pans are gigantic, because we think that's the way. And it's not the way. Things are always changing. So adjust with that, change with that, optimize yourself for the times, go make great art, be successful, and live the be better, be creative, be engaged lifestyle. So
there you go.
Nick, this is another great conversation. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
It's always good, man.
It's a fun topic. And I think if I didn't stop myself, then we would just keep talking about this until the morning, because we are super passionate about it, and we want to see our friends in independent film win. So, yeah, thanks for joining. And if you want to learn more and talk to us more and engage more with this podcast and with us, it's easy to do, Nick. You know, you can email us. Easy. Yeah, you can email us at contact@bonsai.film.
Yep. Any
questions, concerns, feedback, tell us you love us, tell us you hate us. We'll take it all. Most people do it on social. They do it at _ that's _ Bonsai Creative. You can find us there on Instagram and on Twitter. If you go to Facebook, you can find us by just searching for Bonsai Creative, and we'll pop right up. So please reach out to us that way. If you want to reach out to me and Nick directly, we are active on Twitter. Nick is at Nicholas Bugs, and I am at Flame in Your Heart. Your is spelled UR, so Flame in Your Heart. On Twitter, you can find me, or you can actually just search my name, I believe at this point, Christopher Barkley, and I will be the light-skinned guy with curly hair, and then I will come right up. So you can
light-skinned
guy.
Skinned.
And I'll come right up, and I'll be sure to get back with you on that as well. So that is all. Oh, I cannot forget to do this. We like to give a lot of helping hands to the audience. We need the audience to give us one back. And here's our ask. Our ask is to please go to Apple Podcasts, rate and review this podcast 5 stars. It seems like a trite ask. It seems like an outdated ask. It's not. They are still using the system. It is still valuable. It still helps people find our podcast. So it is critically important for us to get this word out and to spread the message as wide as possible. Go to Apple Podcast. It takes just a few seconds, and rate us 5 stars. And if you have time, leave a review. And maybe, Nick, what we'll do is we'll have a little contest we'll work out for the next Indie Talk, where if you can prove you rated the podcast 5 stars or reviewed, we'll send you something in the mail, or find some way to, send you a gift. Maybe we'll buy you an NFT. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But please do that for us. We'll love you for it forever. We appreciate it. And so with that, Nick, please send us off with the credo.
Well, I would love to. I know you already did it, so we'll say that the light-skinned that did curly hair dude has done it already. So now the darkly complected, bald-headed dude will go ahead.
No one knows you're bald right now because your hood is on.
That's right. But yeah, I'll give it up because I love it, man. So yeah, be better, be creative, and be engaged.
And thank you for listening. Nick, talk soon.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure, dude.
Peace.
All right. Deuces.
You've been listening to the Make It podcast. To find more information about this week's topics, including links to relevant blog posts, projects, and indie creatives, please visit our website at www.bonsai.film. If you haven't already, you can join our podcast community on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice by searching for Make It Bonsai Creative, and the show will pop right up. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _ Bonsai Creative, and Facebook by searching for Bonsai Creative. And of course, if you're looking to take a big step towards your filmmaking success, go to www.bonsai.film and click on Book Us to schedule a free discovery meeting and needs assessment. You have everything to gain. Until next time, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for for listening.